International, along with Ryan Albretsen and Raji Abraham. And on this podcast, we're going to be discussing everything having to do with digital AI workforces, how it impacts businesses and the lives of the people that use them, and the good that we are endeavoring to bring to the world. So we're very excited to have everybody with us today. And before we get into it, guys, Ryan, you and I spoke about this on a different channel. So if you noticed, I got my little yarmulke today on. I was at the beach with my youngest a couple of days ago, and typical dad moment is low tide. I'm like, hey, why don't you just come in? The water's fine. We'll swim out to the reef. It'll be great. And then all of a sudden, like, the waves are getting a little higher. The chop is whatever. Like, fine, it's like 2-3 feet. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, it must have been like a 6-foot wave, and that's very rare here in Boca. Boom! It slams right into my back. I go flying like Superman. I'm grabbing on to these like expensive like Oakley glasses that I have, and all of a sudden I'm like, there's nothing on my head. So my daughter's like, look, there's a hat. So I grabbed the hat, and there's some fish outside of the coast of South Florida now that's going to light Shabbos candles. So that was the story from a few days ago. So, very excited about what we have today, guys. We're going to start to talk about, Raji, your vision of the digital AI workforce platform, how we got to this point in time, and learn a little bit about that. And then Ryan, as always, we'll get some insights, and we'll have a pretty fun time. Raji, why don't we start with you, and why don't we start with the why of your vision of being the founder of this digital AI workforce platform that we have?
Sure, Jason. Thanks for inviting me. I'm so excited to be part of these conversations. So really, if you look at it, right, the world is changing with all the different AIs and terminologies going there. There has always been within the computing industry ability to get things done through computers. Way back when you think about, the US Census doing computing with the IBM machines, it was always there. Where it has changed in the last few years, especially when OpenAI came with ChatGPT, is that the world suddenly realized, hey, I can do way more things with the computers. So the digital AI worker is a little bit, I would say, a repackaging of some of the older ideas into a way where now you can expect more from these automation systems. That's really at a high level what's happening. And not just that, the entry into getting things done has come down. As technologies are growing faster, the cost of doing it has come down, where now it's not like you're purchasing a Cadillac, it's more like you're buying a Toyota Camry, So that's where things have changed.
Yeah, and I remember, Raji, the first time ChatGPT, the first thing I asked it to do, because you didn't know, back then you didn't know, okay, what is this ChatGPT going to do? I asked him to write me a poem about my 3-year-old son. And it gave a few details about my son, and it came back with the coolest poem. And I sent it to my wife, and I remember her writing back, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. I didn't know you could write like this. So I was like, okay, cool. I can do that. She thought it was like, amazing. And then, of course, I told her. But I think we're all learning what AI can do and how we can leverage, the power of AI, right?
There's only one thing that's wrong with that story, Ryan. You missed out on Monica being the first ever customer of the Albretsen Politic Insights, which she could have shared with her friends, and you could be like a New York Times best-selling poet right now.
Could have.
But thank goodness you're here with us. Lesson learned: the next time you have an innovation like that with your wife, turn it into a digital book like they see on LinkedIn, and you'll post like $90,000 a month like everybody does on LinkedIn. So anyway, getting back on track here. Raji, the IBM example with the IRS is very interesting, right? And how the pragmatic simplicity of the kind of cycle of computing and how you broke that down was really interesting, I think, of how AI could be framed out with its impact, with governments, with businesses, day-to-day lives. Can you give us a rundown, when it comes to the digital workers and it comes to the utter simplicity of how those digital workers can affect the lives of people, whether they're, franchise owners, they operate hospitals or they operate construction businesses or other businesses. What is it within the vision that we're learning about from you? What is it that's really the main thing about how we can interpret the invention, if you will?
Yeah, so let me just look at it from 5 different ways of structuring the information. Think of those digital workers as kind of an employee, a virtual employee, right? And it has these 5 interesting features. One is it can process information, right? And I'll go a little bit more details as we go further, but think of that as processing information. The second one is being able to communicate. The third one is being able to make decisions, that you give certain controls and it'll be able to make decisions. The fourth one is about, it's available 24/7, it's available. And the fifth one is learning through patterns. Now, if you're a manager who has managed employees, you will immediately recognize that these 5 things are what you're looking for as your subordinates doing. I remember a scenario, a story that said a boss told his direct reports, go bring me a rock. And if you all know that story, right? The guy goes and gets a rock. Every time he gets a rock, the boss says, no, I don't want this. I want this. I want this. I want that, right? So the idea is, if you are able to get to exactly what you want by giving the least amount of instructions, that's really the kind of digital worker you want.
It's also the kind of human you want as well. If you have the digital workers, so it's this kind of human. All right, so that's interesting. That's interesting. So if we look at that level, of simplicity, what kind of insights can we glean from there in terms of the structure of these workers? And the follow-up question there would be the structure of the workers. And then I know within our platform we have 5 specific ones that we're bringing to the market. Can you tell us about this again, the simplicity of how this approach works across just about every business vertical or government vertical or health vertical that really not only like you said, not only solves the problem of the rock, but also from an operational standpoint maybe also aligns behaviors and strategic initiatives of teams as well.
Yeah, so before I go into the 5 personas that we come with and why we came up with that, right? Let me give you an example where, if I have to break that down to saying, what does that mean, process information, communicate, right? Let's take an example of a finance department and where, you have to deal with invoices, right? When you say it can process information, it's basically saying that, okay, given a particular file, whether it's a PDF or whether it's an invoice, it can read, it can extract, it can enter information into the accounting system, right? That's what typically a person would do, open up that file, look at it and go type it in. That part is what I call as a processing of information. Communicating is another thing. If you have ever had employees who are great workers, but all they do is sit in the corner and work and then nothing comes out of them except that, okay, if you ask some question, they answer, right? Communicating is where it'll keep...
Did we get the coffee order? I got to get back to work.
It will give you the right level of information so you know exactly what is going on. So I got 50 invoices and I processed 17 of them and the 18th one had this problem. All of that is there, right? When you talk about making decisions, this is again where you want some of the autonomy given to that particular system. There are, exceptions. So you don't want this person to constantly come and bug you saying that, hey, I got this, what should I do? You're giving some autonomy there. Of course, 24/7, we know what that means, right? It's not like, okay, hours are from, East Coast or a West Coast, morning 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and only weekdays, right? No, it's available all the time. The last one, which is, right, learning through patterns is extremely important, right? We talk about how people connect the dots, right? So you load an invoice, it knows, okay, this area is this is the invoice number, this is the actual line items. You're not teaching it just knows how to do it. So that's part of it. The other patterns may be, you're seeing some exceptions, like this particular vendor is constantly sending invoices late. So maybe I should do something, right? Those are all the patterns that it can learn on its own and then figure out. So that's what I'm seeing, these 5 ways of doing it.
So basically, like any repetitive, rule-based process, those tasks that we're spending time doing every day, those could be handed off to a digital worker?
Absolutely, absolutely. Repetitive is definitely one. And this is where the personas, the 5 personas that we talk about as our approach comes into play, where you can pick and choose. It's almost like in a choir, you have personalities, right? Some people can sing the high notes, some people can sing the low note. Now, when you want a choir to sing, you want to have a combination of all of that. So your digital workers that we have created have 5 personas. At the lowest end, we call as the pulse, which is where it knows how to, based on information, do reactive decisions. All the way up to the high end, which is it knows how to strategically make decisions. Now, depending upon the scenarios, you can create a combination of those and come up with a solution.
What if your wife asked you not to sing, like, ever?
I
played tuba, trombone, and piano in high school, so I stayed away from singing a lot.
I gave that choir example because I used to play for the church choir, and all I would do was play the keyboard. I would never sing because I know I'm not good at singing.
Indeed, the Paul McCartney of the group here. So, Raji, it's funny. When you were talking about the operational efficiencies here. One thing that kind of crossed my mind is that we see a lot of people are kind of running for the hills in terms of like, hey guys, taking my job, it's ruining my profession. All these consultants going to be out of work because OpenAI decided to open up a consulting division. The one thing that dawned on me as we're talking is that it's actually going to probably be the opposite, because when you have when you have entry level positions and they can see the reports and the consistency of the human behaviors based upon the follow-ups, if anything, the younger crowd in the audience is going to be able to learn business processes and business acumen faster in a way, because they'll be able to see and evaluate the human behavior so they can strategically do their job better.
Right. And I saw something today on LinkedIn, and it's so true. Everyone's worried about, is AI going to take my job? No. AI is not going to take your job, but somebody using AI is going to take your job.
Right.
So you have to, somebody using a digital worker can be much more efficient than any human, right? So we have to be cognizant of that, right? Okay, so basically we know what the concept of the digital workers are.
Right.
Now we need to really, can we go into the key benefits of why digital workers are such a hot topic right now with everything?
But before we do that, Ryan, should the three of us try and sing our way into the next segment, or
you know what?
We will all start with a B flat, probably, right?
We be very flat.
Oh boy!
When it's trying to reach that H above the high G, right? No, right. You raise a good point. I think it would be interesting to kind of dive into that a little bit and get a little bit more meat on the bone there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's a very good point, Ryan. Really, when you look at it from a benefits point of view, right? This is something that we have to highlight it for organizations to understand, right? That is, why are we doing it? Because, like what you said, Ryan, it is not that you can sit and ignore. If you don't do it, your competitors are doing. So that's where you're going to be beaten over from an overall industry, what things are happening. So the quicker you can learn and adapt, certainly is where you have the advantage. If you go look for the benefits, I can think of it as probably 5 major areas again. One is cost and efficiency itself, right? That is, how much are you getting things done when you are putting X number of money into something, right? Let's say in the case of invoices, you're saying, I can process 100 invoices a day. Well, what if you're able to process those 100 invoices in 10 minutes? What does that mean, right? So that is where your cost and efficiency comes into play, right? You can do more invoices. You had a point, Jason.
Yeah, I want to talk about something like that. I want to pause right there, because this is a very interesting inflection point, right? And we've been talking to people across a swath of different ERP ecosystems. Yes, I did say swath because it's a and we were talking about this point, Raji. You see startups like Rillet, you see startups like Havens, you see startups that are getting $75-200 million for doing exactly what you just said. For somebody to leave a traditional ERP infrastructure, go on to this promise of this AI first infrastructure, when we know right now as we speak on this podcast, there's over $500 billion between Oracle, Meta, OpenAI, Microsoft, the U.S. government being poured into these large data centers that aren't even ready yet to process all this information. And what you just said with your statement right there, just with that one digital worker processing invoices in 10 minutes, these guys are saying, listen, come to us. $5,000 a month, you'll get this whole ERP thing that you can't get at NetSuite. But if what I'm hearing, Raji, is that not only are the digital workers, not only can we build almost like a bespoke ERP experience, but anybody who would participate in this digital AI workforce platform that you're explaining, it sounds like they don't really have to have it in their purview. I have to jump from my SaaS ERP to an AI ERP. I could get a digital worker here, and like you said, 100 invoices could take me all day, or 100 invoices take me 10 minutes. I'd rather take it 10 minutes, stay on NetSuite, Salesforce, or ServiceNow, not jump anywhere. And this enables me to not have to go through a major digital transformation, just to process invoices faster. And it's something I'm a little bit passionate about because it's beyond, at one point in time, innovation is amazing with AI, but a lot of these companies are showing up too early to solve problems that people either don't even know they have, or they can just get a worker to solve.
Right. So the other point is improving the quality and ensuring consistency. Right. When you say, okay, I'm going to process 100 invoices a day, how many errors are there? Right. Can you do that with minimal errors? So that's really important. Right. The other one is you had something, Ryan?
No, I mean, that's what I was saying. Human error is a big deal. I think that could be hammered home. When you're copying and pasting from one spreadsheet to another, you're going to make an error. You're just doing the same task, one after the other. You're going to copy and paste something into a wrong field and not even realize it, right? And that could cost the company money right there. But instead of that human in that position doing that, have a digital worker help to do that, and that human now could be freed up to do other things that are making the company money, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And also having an audit trail, that things have happened. Who was that? Somebody recently mentioned that, hey, I hire these people to make phone calls and they have these fake phone calls and I have to now chase really they actually made a call or not, right? So those things you can overcome with this.
Right.
The third point is about having a strategic advantage, right? That is, when you have the people who have the brain power to do things are asked to do day-to-day menial work, right? You are taking opportunities out of them, right? Let them make human decisions that require real brain power. That's where you have a strategic advantage, right? You can have, because those folks know exactly how the industry works, what are the competitive advantage. You give them more time to think about it, and there you have an advantage.
That in itself is an amazing point to bring up, because when we look at the economy right now and how we're coming out of kind of a lull between the tariffs post COVID, and how strategic advantages now, I mean, in a good economy you need it, but right now as we're coming out of it, you're going to need it even more because of the cash flow right now. But what's fascinating about that statement, Raji, is that you didn't say let the AI guide. You didn't say the AI is going to establish. What you said was let the AI take care of the repetitive work from the creative strategic folks, so the more creative, more strategic. And then by using AI in a purposeful way to improve marketing plans, to improve research, to improve how they want to see the market and how they want to craft the go-to-market, like you said, it enables businesses to get the maximum return on their employee investment, rather than all hands on deck, there's a fire because someone didn't do their repetitive process right. Frees up the creativity and frees up a constraint that most managers that are in CYA mode are just looking to kind of either take care of it. Now, what's fascinating is that the AI is actually a very smooth part of someone's day. It actually leads to more output for the more creative and strategic roles, which I don't think is something a lot of people think about, because it's becoming more of a crutch and a phony silver bullet than something that you add to your day to make it better. And that's something that is pretty fascinating about the approach here.
Yeah. So similar to that, right, is the operational benefits. For example, you bring in a new employee, you have to train that person, right? That's a huge learning curve.
Yep.
Sometimes you will say, well, I have to operate in 50 countries. So now you have to come up with so many different language variations. Well, AI can do all of that for you. So that is, to me, from an operational point of view, you get a significant advantage. You can have a predictable, consistent output. That again says, okay, if I'm going to go into a new market, I know what my AI worker can produce. Therefore, I don't have so much unknowns in my territorial areas. Right.
And then those unknowns, going back, to my days of NetSuite, the unknowns could be, what's the discount levels? What are the cultural norms versus what's inside of the ERP? What kind of skilled workers are there in region that you might have to source elsewhere? There's so many different things when you do a land and expand, when you go into a new territory, that freeing up that headspace for those country managers, it really removes the blockers of growth, which is quite significant.
Yeah, and the last point is about reducing risk, right? In this area, for example, fraud is a big deal. Mm-hmm. We can have controls through AI where fraud can be detected. You can have better security. And the other thing often businesses don't do is a concept called business continuity, right? For whatever reasons things don't work, humans are not able to come to that place. Can AI take over and continue your business, right? That's again, risk reduction.
I can't tell you how many times, whether it was an enterprise econ platform, ERP platform, people would leave or be terminated that had 5, 10, 15 years of domain knowledge. And the manager is like, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell them to document it. And then all of a sudden, you're going through these months or quarter-long exercises of just trying to figure out what the heck they did, and there's actually one situation where we fell so behind in the market that a couple of years later the company had to be sold because e-commerce was just moving that quickly. So it's a real thing.
So can you take us through, Raji, the measurable ROI on this? I think so many companies, when you go to them, they're going to say, oh, great, you're saying that it can save X amount of hours, but how do you measure that? It's this much money to get started. It's this much money for, licensing. But really, how are you going to be able to break that down to the client and show them that it really does make sense? Because we all want to see the numbers, right? The numbers show everything.
Yeah, so Ryan, you brought a very important point, is that often people do not consider the return on investment or don't know how to actually measure it, right? Now, in fact, one of the reasons why we have invested in this ROI calculator is to help organizations understand what that is. And really the way you want to look at it is there are some hard numbers you can compute. That is, if you're going to replace some of the human work by an AI so that those human beings can do other complex tasks, right? So that hourly rate you can easily compute. That says how much labors you have saved, right? Those are hard numbers, right? So for example, if a person is working 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, and out of that, maybe 30% of that can be automated, it's simple math to say, what is the rate at which you're paying that person? How many hours you are saving there, and that is your money back. Of course, you want to subtract how much it costs to implement and what's your run cost, but that's where our ROI calculator will come in. Those are the simple numbers, right? There is the intangibles, that is, okay, now that your person that you have given a different role, they can bring in more money, grow the business, better strategies, right? What is the lost opportunity cost? There is again fairly complex computations, but you can do that too. Putting all of that together, you can easily see, for $1,000 that I'm spending, I'm able to get $10,000 back. Hey, it's a no-brainer. Why don't you do it?
Yeah. So you'll be able to actually show how it impacts the bottom line.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
so that is one of the reasons why, it's a good segue. That's one of the reasons why we want to help organizations understand, where the ROI comes in through a concept we are introducing called free POC, right? That is, we want to give you guys an actual feel of an AI working in your environment. And we want to do it for free. And we can tell you exactly why we are doing it. But that the concept is that, the fastest path to trust is not having slides and sales calls and promises, right? That is, if you have software working in your hand, solving a real problem, there's nothing more than that.
Yeah.
So that's the whole idea. That is, we want to actually give you the working, product. And then you don't have to invest in it because you don't want people to spend money for belief, right? Belief should be free. So that's why you're saying it's a free POC.
And best of all, if you get to POC, we promise that we will not be singing at all on this podcast ever. So I think that's more insight, for the audience to take part. So in terms of the POC, so I think what we'll do is we'll put a link in the comments below about, a link that you could, come to our website and you could, submit for the POC, and we'd love to get them built and then feature those folks on the podcast and have them tell us what they think, and if they really love it, no singing. If they didn't really love it, we're gonna be like the second coming of Kiss. I'll as someone who's met Gene Simmons before, I'll take Raji. You could be Paul Stanley, and then Ryan. You could be, one of the other guys, the drummer.
Do we have to wear the makeup on the podcast though?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be an AI that'll just
that generates it. All right,
everybody. On behalf of Raji Abraham, Ryan Albretsen, my name is Jason Asher. Thank you for joining the Datascades Digital AI Workforce Podcast for our first episode. We're wonderful to have you guys, and we will see you next week. Until then, stay digital and stay activated. Take care, everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.